So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I was abducted by aliens.
Yeah. Max sent me the video.
Yes.
I was hoping we could get to this. Okay, this is exclusive. You're listening to the PJF Podcast, a show dedicated to decoding elite sports performance and fitness. I'm Paul Fabritz, and I'm an MBA strength and conditioning and performance trainer. If you want to become superhuman, take your fitness, and take your sports performance to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's do it. All right, guys, we got a very special guest today. We got Vernon Griffith in the house. He's been on our podcast before, but I wasn't there. He was with our mutual friend, Max. So some of you guys already know Vernon, but thanks for being here, and maybe just give like a quick little 2-minute background on who you are.
Oh, man.
How you got here.
Well, like I said, I hate talking about myself, bro. But am I supposed to look at you or am I supposed to look at...
Either one. Usually just me.
Yeah. All right. Vernon Griffith, for those listening in. Been a coach for, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. Work a lot with football, military special operations, a lot of random sports like extreme motorsports, Paralympians, like a lot of random things, which I think has guided me to where I'm at with training right now, with movements. But mobility is, I guess, my big kick thing. Just something I think is fun and enjoyable to do. But, whatever the athlete needs. I got a wife, 2 kids, yeah, man.
So you had a gym in Virginia, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then so you recently sold out of that, or?
Yep. So I'm no longer with that. That was kind of around, I guess, when COVID was. That all ended. So now doing a bunch of private consulting, working with athletes, a lot of online stuff now, which is perfect with timing.
Yep.
But honestly, enjoying the flexibility that comes with all of that, to be quite honest.
Yeah. So we were just talking about this a little bit earlier. The stress of owning a gym. So it's one of those weird metrics that we all grow up thinking that that's what makes you successful. Who has the biggest gym? Who has the fanciest equipment? Who has the biggest athletes? And then you kind of got to go through that and live through that and then be like, this is a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And I got all this overhead, and I got a lot to deal with, and hiring and firing. And, it comes with a lot. And most of the people that I know that own big gyms are like, they're drowning. What are your thoughts there from being through that to going now kind of the more low overhead option?
I think it's that whole concept of like you wanting a seat at the dinner table, and then you get that seat and you're like, man, dinner sucks.
Yeah.
Like this is not what I expected. I expected dinner to taste a lot better.
Yeah.
Conversations were going to be
breakfast guy. Like I want pancakes and bacon.
That can be dinner too. But I think it's that whole concept of like you're told your whole life, like you either in the collegiate setting or if you're in the private setting, you have to have this huge facility. Like this is the direction you have to do this. And then you get there and you're just like, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I talk to so many young coaches right now that are navigating into the private space because they perceive as the flexibility with it. And I'm like, if you do it the right way, like there's a lot of overhead costs. And if you don't understand business and money, like you're it's almost like you could be the best strength coach in the world. If you don't understand, you don't have a good accountant, like you're literally jumping in blind.
Yeah.
Because you are not a strength coach anymore. You're a business owner who has this skill of strength and conditioning. Like you're not a strength and conditioning coach first and foremost anymore. Yep. You're a business owner.
Yep.
And if you don't understand business, you're going to be in trouble.
100%. Yeah, like you mentioned before, if you have $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month in overhead for this big gym, you got to work really hard to get in the green. To make any money, you got to work a lot, and then it's like, hey, man, I want to go on a 3-week vacation, or hey, I sprained my ankle and I can't work for 3 weeks. How do I come up with that 10, 15 grand? And there's just so much stress behind it. Whereas if you just went the low overhead option, you could take vacations. You don't have to make as much to be in the green.
I think it's, to me, it hit me was there's a big difference between standard of living and quality of living.
Yeah.
Like you think that I have to make X amount of dollars to be happy, when realistically you can make a little bit less than that, have way more flexibility, and be completely comfortable.
100%.
So it's like you have to figure out where the lifestyle you live is. And for most people, when you actually talk to them, it is a lot less than they think.
Yeah.
Like I have to make, I don't want to throw numbers around, I have to make 100. I have to make 120.
Yeah.
Whereas at 70, they live a great life. They get time off. They're done working early. They have the weekends to themselves. And it's almost like they don't realize that quality of life that they could have.
Yep.
And when it comes to owning a business, man, it's all the small stuff. Like, it's per hour, and then you just become, just wrapped up in this cost, and you don't even realize it exists. Mm-hmm. Like every hour you have to charge this much, and people don't think about it that way.
Yeah.
Like it's like, well, the daily rate is, I don't know, $60 an hour or $70 an hour. Be like, well, do you know how many hours you have to work now in a day to make a profit? Mm-hmm. And not including all the expenses and insurance and bills. Like it's a lot. And if you don't have someone that's smart with business to sit you down day one, you could be jumping into something that you're not ready for.
Totally. Yeah. And we're not saying you can't be successful owning a gym. You totally
Absolutely
can. I think we've both done it, but I think it's, you gotta really understand, how do I make money when I'm not on the floor? I can't keep trading my hours for dollars. And so, it's the business has to be running when you're not there. Mm-hmm. And if you're not at that point, then you haven't, put in enough work. And that's the point that you need to be at. And then other things, like if your overhead is really high, you might not want to rely on training income. Like you might want to have a medical side. You might want to have, if you have courts that you can rent out, you might want to bring in other trainers to pay you rent. So it's like, can I get my overhead completely paid for just by renting out the facility, and then everything that you make is all profit? But I just don't think that people look at it with that mentality.
Or even outsourcing, the small things that you're not good at, like hiring a videographer to come in, knowing that that's an expense now, but it's something that they're really good at, to take that off your plate, or an experienced accountant in your field. That's the most valuable thing you can, like when people ask what's the best piece of gym equipment I can buy when I open a gym, it's a good accountant, mm-hmm. because he's going to make everything run. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very valuable thing to purchase. Not saying someone's purchasable, but to invest in.
Yeah, for sure. And you're talking about kind of being on the other side of that grind, and being in more of that lower overhead option now. You mentioned you got more time, mm-hmm. and that's the asset at the end of the day. If you have time, it's way more important than money. One, because, life's about spending time with your family and enjoying it. But two, when you have time, you got your brain power, you got brain energy, and now you can come up with better ideas. Now you have more time to study. And so you really transform yourself. And that's one thing when you're in that kind of rat wheel of like, I got to work to make enough to pay for my house and for my gym. Your creativity just dies because you have to be on the floor so much coaching. And, you're worried about all these little things, and it just drains the creative energy. And you end up relying on the information that you learned 10 years ago in college. A lot of these coaches don't have the time to level up every day. But when you have time on your hands, you got the mental energy, and you can dig in and study and try new stuff. And, you end up transforming yourself, which down the line is going to make you way more money. Now you can put out better products and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that concept goes with spending time and investing time. Like you just said, when you're on the floor actively doing something, that's making money for now. Like you as a business owner, or even a personal trainer in a gym, or maybe even a coach in a collegiate or professional setting, is finding ways to invest time so that there's a back end return. Like you're front loading time to make money on the back end. Yep. And that's investing time versus you spending it on the floor, where the second that 6 p.m. ends, it's done now.
Right.
Like there's no, when you finish with that athlete from 5 to 6 p.m., it's done. Like now there's no more money after that.
Yeah.
But if you can spend that 5 to 6 p.m. investing that time somehow, I think there's a lot of value with trying to figure out ways to do that.
Yep. 100%. So, how did you kind of become the mobility guy? I feel like you probably do a lot. You probably do much more, but like the public perception would be like, Vernon Griffith, oh, mobility, great, get my mobility information from him.
Yeah.
How did you kind of end on that? Is that just something you've always been passionate about?
Not really, to be honest, man. My experience with training people, it was a concept of just growth from training. A lot of the guys I used to work with were disabled veterans. So there's no textbook for 2 injuries. You know, if you have 1 injury, there's a textbook. You do these movements, these exercises, this is the rest protocol. These are, this is what we've done based off of studies and research. But the second you have 2 injuries or 3 or 4, or start combining like TBI, brain injuries, there's no answers anymore. So to me, the mobility thing was just watching movement, loading movement, and then that's where my push with mobility is that. Like, it's not just a couple, it's not ponytails and yoga mats. It's so much more than that. So mobility is just movement. Like you said, you always post about movement and talk about it, but it's that concept, and it came out of watching people move that can't do things that they used to. So a good example would be one of the first guys I worked with was a single arm complete amputee and a half arm amputee on the other side. And he was an EOD guy, bomb blew up in his face, took off half his face, almost both of his arms, and he wanted to deadlift. How the hell are you supposed to do that?
Yeah.
But I hooked him up to, vest and straps, and he deadlifted with no arms.
Wow.
Pulled cars with no arms. Not saying that's for everyone or everyone should do that, but
awesome.
that's what he wanted to do. And to me, it was kind of cool because you're giving back something to someone that was taken from them, and they were doing something above themselves. Like, it's not like he was joking around or doing something stupid. He was fighting for people's freedom, and he, in the line of duty, that happened, and something got taken from him that shouldn't have been taken from him. So to be able to give that back, and to me, that's when I started to connect those dots. It's not. I'll show oftentimes when I'm training someone or talking about programming, it's like a star, and everyone does push, pull, hinge, carry, rotation. Everyone does that stuff. And to me, when we write programs, when we create programs, it's about collecting those dots, those 5 dots. But to me, when you're dealing with people with multiple injuries, people that don't have limbs, that have traumatic brain injuries, now it's about connecting dots. Like, I'm still doing all the 5 same things that everyone else is doing with training. We're all doing the same stuff. But now I'm trying to find ways to connect those, to get the brain more involved, to make them feel more comfortable in daily movement situations. So to me, that's what mobility is, and that's the aim, I guess, of where it put me. Am I kind of lumped into the mobility world? Yeah, but I'm okay with that. Like, if that's what gets you in the door so that I can show you everything else, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Like, when you get in, like, oh, we also do field work. We also do this. We also do this. Yeah. But if mobility got you in front of me, I'm cool with that. There's worse things that could get you in front of me.
I feel like a lot of people do need to have that thing of like, I'm this guy.
For sure.
That gets you in the door. Like, people would think of me as like a jump guy, and that gets you in the door, but then I also do injury reduction and speed, and so yeah, I feel like that's kind of a good thing to be known as something.
Absolutely.
So did you go through the traditional route of like, okay, I want them to move better, therefore I'm just going to do a bunch of static stretching? Did you go through that, or did you kind of figure out, hey, it's all about movement, it's all about mobility kind of from day one?
I guess I never was in the static world. Honestly, it's just based off the guys I've always trained, whether it's my military guys, my football guys. They're not going to sit there and dance around on a foam roller for 10 minutes. Yeah. Even if I find it is valuable, like, they're probably not going to do that. They want to train. So that's where like all these loaded movements came in, is because it's stretching with a bar in your hand. It's stretching with the kettlebell in your hand. It's loading tissue under tension. And they think they're just strength training. They think they're working out. And I'm just here trying to blur the lines of the warm up and the workout so they don't know when it started.
Yeah.
To me, that's where the magic of mobility is. It's how I don't want them to be like, oh, the first 10 minutes, that's my warm up. That's my mobility work. That's my movement work. And now we go train. Whereas if I can put a barbell in your hand and we're doing like a loaded landmine sway is no different than me doing an adductor rock back stretch in my mind, or a front foot elevated position, no different than you doing like a passive couch stretch when it comes to what the tissues involved.
Yeah.
So, but they perceive it as working out. So that's kind of where I guess that concept comes from, and how I've been thinking lately.
Yeah. And so you don't feel the need to stretch because, you know, you're strengthening through that full range of motion and all planes of motion. And that's going to give them all the mobility that they can ever need. And not only just that flexibility, but also the ability to control all those ranges.
Absolutely. But I also think it's personality based. So when we talk about loose versus tight, it's always a physical thing. It's always, oh, I feel tight, or I feel loose, or this, my ankle has a ton of hypermobility, where the past couple years, it's now starting to put athletes into a psychological loose versus tight. Like I have athletes that are very loose guys, like they do jujitsu. They want to flow around on the ground. They want to do all my shin box movements and crawling and moving. And then I have my other guys who are my tight guys, my pallet jacks. They don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
They want to bench. If I said, hey, we're going to do a crawling pattern with some of my military guys, they'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not doing any sort of bear crawl. That's punishment. So now it's figuring out that loose versus tight component is, you know, I think it's a psychological thing as well, because there are some guys that want to stretch. There are some guys that want to foam roll, and it's not my job to make, to put my thumb on you to make you do what I want. It's my job to facilitate whoever you are with the best intervention possible, because it could be the best intervention, but if you're not that personality, you missed.
Yeah. So your tight guys, they don't want to stretch, they don't want to foam roll, or they're
that's how I look at it. Like my loose flowy guys that, you know, they want to do all the movement stuff, they want to flow around, they believe in, like, they got all the new lacrosse balls, I got all the new peanut balls, and then I got my tight guys that they just want to show up in bench press. They want to show up in deadlift. Okay, so now since you're not going to do this crawling pattern, we're going to do a landmine press so I can get the scap upwardly rotating that way. I'm not going to tell them we're doing that. Hey, we're just going to do a single arm shoulder press to get your delts rolling. They're like, sick. But
sneaking it in.
Or we're going to do pike push-ups to get the scaps rolling around the rib cage. They just think they're doing push-ups. Like, oh, this is prep movement. Whatever, man. I don't care.
Yep. Totally. The landmine stuff. So is that kind of something that you, and I think you touched on this on the last podcast, but that's something that for a lot of guys, you'll just use that as your warm-up. Like, you're not going to come in and waste a bunch of time doing your traditional warm-up and then get in. It's kind of like, hey, go grab this light bar and let's get through this movement series.
I think it's just a fascinating thing. When someone touches a cold barbell, intent just goes through the roof. Like, I can have you doing the exact same lateral squats with a 10-pound plate in your hand, and you're just going to be like, okay. But the second you're holding a barbell in front of your chest, same exact movement, there's something different about it.
It's true.
I don't know if it's the personality of the guys I train, or girls, and girls as well, so obviously state that. But it just dials up intent. I don't know if it's the temperature of the bar, feeling the knurl. It's almost like, you ever seen the movie Field of Dreams? Like the baseball, old school baseball movie. When Moonlight Graham stepped onto the off the field and he wasn't a baseball player anymore. I think there's, like, when it comes to mobility and warming up, it's the same thing on the platforms. Like when you're on the turf and then when you step onto the platforms, athletes are like, oh yeah, okay, now it's time to train.
Yeah, totally.
Or we just start on the platforms. We grab the barbell, we go through some single leg deadlift patterns, some adductor rocks, some squat patterns. I mean, you're warming up tissue. I'm priming tissue, and I'm starting with intent a little earlier. I think there's a lot of value with that.
Yeah. Most guys, probably 80 to 90% of basketball players, if a guy like me isn't there watching, they're just going to come in and they're going to grab a basketball and they're going to start with light handles or light shooting. They're just going to gradually ramp up from there. Same thing with pro dunkers. You would think they go through this elaborate warm-up with PAP and stuff, and I kind of make them do that here and there, but on their own, they're just going to go touch the rim and then put it in a little bit and then dunk a little harder and then eventually windmill and then through the legs. Sometimes just the task itself is the way to warm up, and especially with the nervous system. I think a lot of people kind of put the nervous system to sleep by doing a bunch of stuff that they don't like to do.
Yeah, is that?
If you don't like to stretch, and I'm making you do this dynamic stretch, like you're probably putting that nervous system to sleep, and your performance isn't going to be as good after.
And I think that comes from being in the private setting, because if you're in the collegiate or professional setting, you have the bandwidth to say you're going to do what I say, and they're going to do it.
Yeah.
In the private setting, you don't have that, or I'm not that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are people that are like, this is my game, you're going to do it, but I'm not that. That's just not my personality. I'm going to try to figure out a way to not say make you happy, but like I want you to enjoy being there. Like I don't want to be that dude.
Yeah.
So it was kind of looking at it like from a perspective, me and my ego, like I only exist, or my profession, because of them. Like I can't coach without an athlete. An athlete can athlete without me.
Yeah.
100%. Like
Totally.
he can totally do his job without me.
Yep.
I need him or her. So I think once you start looking at it that way, it's like, okay, well, if I need them, how can I bring value to them? How can I imprint with them that they, I don't want to say need me, but they do need me. Like I want to be valued. I want to be wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to meet them somewhere to get that, have that relationship.
Yep. For sure. This is the first year that I've not had structured cool downs. I've always had the guys do the same thing. And this year I go, what do you like to do to cool down? And some are like, yeah, I like to stretch. Cool, do it. But like when you look at the research, there's some things that I'm a little more firm on because I know it works, and you know I got to get to it. But cool downs and post-workout stretching and post-workout ice and the studies are back and forth. They're contradicting. Like we don't really know, and it's possible that nothing really works that well. And so it's like, you know, what do you do? Some guys like, I'm big on ice baths. Let's fill up the ice bath. You know, some guys, I'm big on stretching. Okay, cool, stretch. I got one guy who's like, yeah, I don't think anything works. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's like people are chasing this magic method, and really it's just like reduce stress, eat healthy, and sleep, and that's what's going to work. But he goes, yeah, I don't think anything works. So I usually just do some low-level movement. I'll jog or walk. And I'm like, yeah, cool, let's do that. I got a trampoline. Go bounce on the trampoline for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I got all these different guys doing these different cool downs just based on what they think works for them.
Which is invaluable. Like that is what's going to get them back to that reset, is what they perceive as valuable. And I think coaches fight battles that they don't need to battle. Like I relate coaching in a lot with like the relationship with my wife and my kids. Like, am I going to get in an argument with someone about the validity of cryotherapy? Not saying it's not or whatnot, just throwing something out, or ice baths or whatever.
Yeah.
Or if he just says it feels good, it's not going to hurt him. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
Like go for it. Like go knock yourself out. Like I want to go do this new Reiki therapy. Perfect. Go for it, man. Like, why not? Like,
yeah. If there's a huge downside, okay, now I'll step in. I'll pick that battle.
Yeah.
If there's no huge downside,
what's
and
the point?
He thinks it works, well, then it probably will, because the brain is very powerful.
The only thing more powerful that, in my experience, that I've seen in the placebo effect is the nocebo effect. When you tell someone something doesn't work, and that's the thing they've been relying on for the past year.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I've been doing cryotherapy every week, and that's been the thing that saved me. And then I come in and say, yo, cryotherapy's stupid.
Yeah.
He's like, what? Like, in the back of his mind, that me saying that will always be there.
Big time.
Always.
Now he doesn't have his secret.
He doesn't have, and you just stripped him of that for no reason.
Totally.
Cherry juice or bananas, that's my secret. And you're just like, well, blah, blah, blah.
Technically, the studies say.
Exactly. And you just took away his superpower for no reason.
Yeah. I used to make that mistake a lot. I used to be big on like Mythbusters because I knew so much information from the science. They'd bring it up and be like, yeah, that doesn't work.
I did the same thing.
Yeah. Now it's just like, you know, as long as it's not going to hurt you. There's some stuff where they're going to like, hey, check out this guy's program. I'm feeling good. And I'm like, I don't know if I would do that. I would stop that. Because that probably will hurt you. But there's other things where I'm just, I'm not gonna choose that battle.
Come in with their like new recovery spandex knee brace type thing, and they're like, this is gonna speed my recovery up from my squat day. And I'm just like, sure, man. Yeah. Like whatever. Like these new socks help circulation. Awesome.
Yeah.
Go for it, man. Like there's no negative outcome. What's the point of me saying anything?
Yep. Yeah, it takes you as the trainer to kind of remove your ego to start to get to that point where it's like, yeah, I just read a paper. I got a bunch of good information on this, and I'm not going to step in.
Yeah.
I'm not going to show you how smart I am. And it's just the whole concept of the idea of a hands-off practitioner. Like, there's a lot of information that we should know and details that we should know that we should not relay to them. It's like, how can I do this with less words? Details are for the coaches. And then it's like, can I just show you with no words and then you do it? Great. Because now you're not going through that whole conscious process of trying to learn movement through words. You know, you can describe however many times what sour candy tastes like, but they need to eat the sour candy. You can't do certain things through words.
Yeah, man, that's a funny. I was actually having a conversation this past week when we were talking about coaching cues, and I just simply said to a coach that I knew, I was like, if you had a kid, how would you teach them how to sneeze or how to blow their nose? And they were like, well, I would teach them how to, just push out on the air. And I was like, how would you do that? Like that was a big thing with my kids. How do I teach my son who has a snotty nose that won't stop just sniffling how to blow his nose? And I'm no idea. No idea. But it's an interesting.
Yeah. It's so like what I try to tell coaches, who like want to mentor with me or like our edu members or whatever who ask about this, like, how do I coach this? What are the certain cues? And I'm like, first of all, realize that there's a higher level intelligence, and that's the subconscious, and that can hold millions of pieces of information, and all of those things are happening at the right time. Look at just how complex human movement is.
For sure.
Shooting a basketball, there's so many millions of things happening at the right time. The conscious brain holds 3 pieces of information at one time. Like, that is so low level. You're driving on the street and you're looking for an address. You have to turn down the music because it's too distracting for you.
Absolutely.
Like, that's 2 pieces of information. It's the music and the address, and we can't even handle that. And we're out here coaching strictly with our conscious brain. Like, you got to figure out how to tap into that complete, subconscious. Now there's times where you just exhaust all possibilities of how to teach it without words. And so sometimes you're going to have to go in and give extra stuff and give extra cues, and that's fine. But, you want to, it's always the last resort. It's like, can I do it with just showing you? Okay, no, I can't. Well, then can I do it with 5 words? No. Can I do it with 10 words? And then you're just playing around with your cues and you're seeing what works. But, so many people learn movement based on words, and it goes into the wrong part of the brain. And now it's going to take 30 days, 60 days to get back to the subconscious. And it's like, you just delayed the whole process of learning by so much.
Yeah. And when it comes to movement, there's so much variances and variables that are correct. Like, one of my least favorite words with training when you get on social media is dysfunction. Like, who says what's dysfunctional?
Yeah.
Like, someone's squat versus someone's jump or landing. Like, who defines that?
Yeah.
Like, outside of some research studies based off of, common angles that we hit puts the, some sort of tendons at higher risk. Obviously, I understand that. But who defines what the word dysfunction means?
Right.
And if you are over coaching and trying to prove your ego on someone, you're truly missing a very valuable learning moment, not just for you, but for them. Like, hey, I want you to do a squat. That's one thing I always say is, I try to tell someone to do a movement without even showing them what the movement is first, to let me see, because it's funny as hell for one. Hey man, show me what a squat looks like. And they're like, because they want to impress you, so it's their best version. Yeah. But at the same time, I think that's very valuable. We can laugh. Laughter is a very quick way to break down the trust barrier.
True.
And at the same time, it's learning. Like, to me, that first one that's what their normal is. Before I try to say, okay, now turn your foot, now create torque in your toes, now grab your toes to the ground, now think posture, now think breathing.
Yeah.
That's what their natural is. So in a basketball game, what do you think they're going to go to? Nothing that I said. No. Nothing.
Instincts take over.
Instincts take over. So what are their instincts? Like, I'll go back to like my daughter. When it comes to baseball, you don't improve someone's swing by telling them how to swing. You watch their swing and you say, okay, well, maybe you can get a little bit more back into your hips. Maybe we can, golf swing. Maybe we can improve some exercises to get into your hip a little bit more to clear hip extension. But I'm not going to be like, all right, I want you to grab your golf club and I want you to get into your backswing. No, like, how do you swing and how can I improve it?
Yeah. And we have these movement ideals based on studies, but these studies were done in a biomechanics lab. And they probably weren't done on the population that we care about. And that's why, so many people kind of misinterpret research, and then, people make these bold claims about like, this is how you should move because this study said so. And I'm like, well, that was done on a untrained college age male.
Yeah.
I'm training an NBA player. An NBA player, the movements are very different. The higher level you go, the more performance you need, which means the more risk you're going to take, because there is that, there's that spectrum of performance and injury. Like, and some people think that's not true. Like, the safest movements are also the highest performance. Like, the way I break that down is like, ball goes up off the rim. I could either not go get it, or I could go jump 40 inches knowing that I'm probably going to get bumped in the air and I'm going to come down on one leg. I did that for performance. I did that to win the game. I have to do that for my team. We know that's a mechanism of injury. Landing with contact on one leg, but it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And so I did. I chose performance, and I risked a little bit of injury. But there's always going to be that trade-off. And so, yeah, people kind of want to be the armchair quarterback and be like, well, this is exactly how you have to move. Well, you're going to remove their ability to be good at the sport.
Yeah. And when it comes to mobility and movement, I hate to harp on it, but when you're dealing with people with injuries that grew up in specific environments in basketball that maybe just hit a huge growth spurt, like, that changes a lot. Like, and sometimes that athlete doesn't even realize it changed a lot. Like, how much did you grow this summer? Oh, I grew 6 inches. There's going to be some stuff going on with your hips and feet. Yeah. Like, you don't even realize it. Yeah. But because your body is now trying to adjust to what you got going on now. Younger men and testosterone and how your body changes and how you're putting out more force. Like, there's so much going on that those studies are starting points. Like, that's a great starting point. That's a way for a coach to be like, hey, this is where the research says with this, but I need to have my eyes open so that I can see everything. Yeah.
You got to be a critical thinker at the end of the day. Like, Absolutely. Read the research, but you got to take a step further and think critically. And like, how does this actually apply to my population? But I like what you do because you're exposing people to so many different movements and different planes. And I'm not a huge mobility guy in terms of like, let's always get people lower. Let's always get people more range of motion. I think there's a certain amount, but I think that the mobility guys kind of like to chase a certain amount of like hip flexion, linearly, but it's like, how do you rotate? How do you move side to side? And that's why I kind of gravitated towards your stuff is you're moving in all planes of motion and you're improving mobility that way. And that ends up improving mechanics on the court because you gave their nervous system more options. So you didn't teach somebody, hey, this is how you move on the court. You said, you're going to move how you move, but let me give you more options to choose from. Yep. And so when you kind of ingrain that in the nervous system, then they get into a bad situation and they know how to rotate out of something that they didn't previously know. And so I started doing, I'm calling it like functional parkour. It's basically parkour, but for basketball players to learn how to land in different positions. Because a big part, so many season-ending injuries come from people coming down in bad positions and being afraid to fall. And they're stubborn and they're like, I'm just going to stick this landing. They stick it in a bad position. And you're not comfortable with the floor, like fall, but they don't know how to fall. They're afraid of it. Yep. So I have this whole progression where I kind of start them on the floor and it's like, okay, start from the knees and roll to the floor and then kind of, fall backwards from your knees and roll. And then we'll come to a standing and then we'll do it from jumping. And it's not that I'm going to rep a bunch of that. I just want you to know how to do it and introduce it to your nervous system. Because now when you are going to go land in a bad position, your nervous system goes, hey, I got options. I could land. I could roll out of this. And so I think that's a huge thing with your training is there's so much variability. And there's so many different movement patterns that you're just giving people options to choose from.
I think it makes it fun. And when it comes to the ground, you brought up a funny part. I remember we talked about studies. I read one that said a big indicator for longevity of life was how long in your life you can get up from the ground without using your hands. Was a big indicator of like your health and how long you could live. And I remember hearing that and I was like, damn. When you watch your athletes get up off the ground, what do? They put their hand on their knee every time. They put their hand on the ground. They use their hands. But and that's where that shin box rotation and movement and flowing, when you empower someone with that, that's way more than basketball. That's playing with your kids on the floor. That's you fall on the ground. You know, especially in basketball. I have a couple NBA guys, and it's the taller you get, I feel like the less familiar you become with the ground.
100%.
And you don't want to touch the ground. It's like the floor is lava. Like I don't want to touch the ground.
Which makes sense. It's a longer fall.
Yeah.
It hurts worse than when I fall.
Yeah. And I definitely don't want to touch it with my hands.
Yeah.
Ever. Like that I don't ever want to put my hands on the ground because they know how valuable their hands are.
Well, trust me, I got 3 broken wrists and a broken hand from landing on my hands.
But when you start getting into like, I love like breakdancing and, you know, just kind of reactionary, like movement stuff, like don't touch the stick while I move the stick around.
Oh, I love that one.
They think it's so fun.
Yeah.
And they're in their head, they're not thinking like what I am, like ball and socket joint of the shoulder, reactionary, moving, twisting, rotation. They just think, just don't let stick touch me.
This guy's poking me with a stick.
Yeah, it's fun.
Don't get poked.
But that's
I love that.
There's
drill.
so much value.
Yeah. Maybe I'll try to repost that or post it to the story or something. But that's a really good drill. But yeah, just getting people comfortable with the floor. Like you said, those tall guys, man, they're allergic to it.
Exactly.
And you see how many season-ending injuries happen from landing in those vulnerable positions when you got parkour guys jumping off 2-story buildings and they're not stubborn with their landing. Sometimes they can stick it, but sometimes they're like, hey, I'm just going to go into a roll, you know?
I'm just going to think about football. When's the last time when you see like Russell Wilson who played baseball or Kyler Murray slide because he played baseball because he's familiar with the ground. And then you see some quarterback that's very tall that's not, and you see him go down for a slide and you're like, ugh.
Yeah. Totally.
That looked ugly.
And like receivers, I mean, okay, you look at these NBA guys landing in bad positions, but receivers are going up, jumping 40 inches and getting hit really, really hard. And they don't get the same. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of landing-based injuries, but I don't think there's anywhere near what it would be in the NBA. And I think it's because they spend their whole life getting tackled to the ground. Yeah, they know how to fall, and so like they're getting hit 2 times harder, but they're comfortable like tucking and rolling.
Yeah, I mean, just watch like if you were bored and you want to watch how people interact with the ground, watch like X Games. Watch the people fall off their skateboards. Watch how they ball their body up, how they roll, how they move. And that's why I kind of like jujitsu. In college, I took a class, Aikido. At the time, I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest. This was the hardest, easiest class I've ever took in my life. And I knew nothing about martial arts. But this past off season, it's been a big portion of my training, like accepting someone's energy and then doing something after that off of their energy.
Yes.
So when I come at you using my aggressiveness against me, don't be the aggressive guy. And that's been the thing, like be water, movement, respond. And sometimes that interaction occurs on the ground. Sometimes it occurs in an awkward position. We do a bunch of like wrestling on the ground. Like no one wants to be in someone's space. Like even when we're standing before COVID, like I don't want someone like whispering my ear. That's like one of my biggest things. I'm like, can you stop? Like I don't want someone in my space. And for the most part in sports, you don't want someone in your space. It's it's an animalistic dominant thing to be up on someone. So with the ground stuff, like laying on top of them, pushing on them, wrestling on the ground, I just, there's so much value in that.
Big time. Yeah. I just got my oldest nephew into jiu-jitsu. He was like, yeah, I want to play basketball, but he didn't put in enough work. So I was like, I don't know if you're quite right. Cause out here, like LA, 14-year-old AAU, I mean, they're just through the leg dunks. Like these are little pros. And he's like, yeah, I want to play basketball. I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I want you to do something and I want you to be a part of a community. And that randomly got brought up. I'm like, what about this? And he's like, sure. we took them last week, and my wife filmed the session, and I'm going to start going and actually learning. But first thing they're talking about is, well, this is how you fall. That's step one. This is how you fall. And then, this is how you use somebody else's energy. And this, that stuff makes a lot of sense. And I talk about the concept of basketball strong, which is very different than weight room strong. And that is a huge component of just knowing how to use somebody else, using their body weight against them.
Yes.
Push, pull, give them a little contact, make them think that you're going to give them a bunch and then pull it away. And there's so many players that are really, really strong who have zero weight room strength, zero mass. And you get these players who are wiry strong, like they're super thin, but they grow up with no mass, and they're so used to getting hit that they learn angles and they learn how to take a hit without being moved. Later on, their body fills out, and then they're just monsters.
Yeah.
Because you add the two worlds of, now I got a little mass, I got some weight room strength, and I know how to use it.
That's been my biggest push with football, especially with defensive linemen in the past year or so, is leverage and shaping off someone else's body. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that's that untapped thing. Like, everyone wants to do all these hand drills and all that stuff, and that's fine. I think there's cool and there's a lot of value with that. But when it comes to your body and using your body, like you said, everyone's played basketball with that dude that just didn't stop leaning on you. Mm-hmm. Or you watch some UFC bout and you're like, man, why does that dude not stop leaning on him? Because he's restricting his breathing. He's taking away his space. He's making it harder for that dude to just hold his posture.
Yeah.
At the end of 48 minutes, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a bigger guy and just leaning on someone, mm-hmm. Especially old school basketball on the post, just constantly just on them and on them and on them. Like, people don't want that.
No, 100%. You work with a lot of linemen, so you probably have figured out some really good drills for this, but I call this kind of like sumo wrestler training.
Okay.
And it's like, let's get away from the weights. And you think about like what's going on in the post. You got these big guys just banging. There's not many weight room exercises. I mean, we want to have a little bit of mass. Like, that certainly helps, but it's such a skill. Strength is such a skill. It's like, okay, it's not necessarily all about how much force do I produce, but what angle do I produce it at? So when I'm getting hit, can I get a steeper shin angle to produce more horizontal force to go into him? And that's just not something that we can really replicate that well in the weight room. And so sometimes I have guys just kind of, hold a bar and battle with the bar. And can you push them back? And can you pull them? And just learn how to throw around their body weight. Do you do any of that, which is probably tough for you, because if you have an offensive lineman, it's tough for you as a trainer to go in there and battle with them?
So, I mean, primarily is all like defensive linemen. I don't think I've worked with many offensive linemen. Maybe one, or before they had to specialize, like in high school or college, something they were playing both still. But now it's mostly defensive linemen. But man, it's so collaborative with my guys. It's crazy. Like, I'm learning so much about football that it's almost like unfair. And we'll talk about that, because it's empowering them with the strength and conditioning side. And then at the same time, them teaching me all of this football side. It's almost like insider knowledge now.
Yeah.
But when it comes to shaping and training, we do a ton of just like grabbing the arms, moving the arms, leaning in, those slight nuances. Like you said, we can institute a lot of exercises in the weight room, but how much rhythm and coordination is involved with those?
Yeah.
Something as simple as like a med ball, like everyone does it in programming, like the leaning forward, the chest pass and accelerate out. If there's any sort of hiccup in the movement, or, they push the med ball too early, then how much value is that movement now? It has to be perfectly timed. It has to be perfect rhythm, perfect coordination to get that adaptation or that response that you want out of the drill.
Yeah.
So that I love the field work for that component, because you get to see it. And then, like you said, the weight room stuff is kind of just, to me, that's the extra, that's the icing on the cake, because all that's vanilla. Like, you get so used to, and people tell me all the time, like, oh, my stuff's so out of the box, it's so crazy. I'm like, not really. Like, your box is just a lot smaller.
Yeah. Like,
none of this shit is crazy. And it's almost like the further you get away, you're like, man, it's like ice cream. Like, all these sprinkles and all these toppings are great, but vanilla ice cream is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to training, it all just goes back to that, like simple training methods. It's not simple, but foundational. But then, the field work, I think you learn so much about an athlete when you have them in their environment.
Yeah. It's that whole coordinated force. Like, I might not produce more force per muscle group, but how everything works together, when I sync it together and the timing is right, I'm now stronger than you. And it wasn't the brute force, it was the coordination. And that's why Steph Curry can shoot a ball from further than all the big, strong guys. That's why the golf guy, you're working a little bit in the golf world. It's not always the biggest, strongest guys that are hitting the ball the furthest. It's the fluid swing.
Yeah, it's that coordination. And it's I think that's what it comes with, just watching them in their element, watching their sport, and then how can I add value to this? I hate that I keep saying the word value, but that's what, to me, that's what my training is about.
Yep. Yeah. I think that a lot of people think about it backwards. Probably the current standard in strength and conditioning is the 90% is the weights. And then the 10%, like the extra stuff that you put in at the end, is like the coordinated, or at the beginning you do a few coordination drills. For me, it's the opposite. It's like the meat and potatoes is the movement, the coordination, the fluidity. The extra 10 to 15% is the weights.
It's crazy because this past off season specifically had a little bit more time with guys because of COVID and whatnot. But it's when you're looking at the program, be like, all right, well, we got weight room 4 or 5 days a week. We're going to hit the field for 2 days. And then a couple weeks in, I start to see these field sessions, and they're becoming, I'm getting such good outcomes out of all of them. Like, whoa, maybe we're going to make a shift. Now we're doing 3 days, 3-4 days on the field, 2 or 3 days lifting, because the lifting is becoming tertiary to the field work.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's because the group of guys I have right now, they like doing it more, maybe. But the strength movements, like you said, the pulling, the carrying, the grabbing, the fighting, the close quarters combat type stuff. And then afterwards we can get the bench press and landmine presses and all that stuff as well. Yep. But that stuff to me, that's where my meat and potatoes is becoming.
Yep.
And then we still do all the lifting, not trying to tell anyone to stop doing that, obviously.
Yeah. Anytime you give advice on something, they take it as, so he doesn't like strength training.
No,
he's against strength training. Vernon hates it.
No. That's definitely the foundation of what they need. Or some people need, some people don't need that.
Yeah.
Some people don't need that. And I have guys that are brute, strong country boys that, they don't need, I'm not saying they don't need to get stronger, but they need coordination and rhythm. They need to be able to use their hands better. They need to be comfortable in someone else's space. They need to be able to rotate and turn. That's what makes Aaron Donald special. It's not because he can trap bar deadlift an insane amount. Yep. It's because you never see the numbers on his front of his jersey.
Right.
You only see the ones on the shoulders. Like, he can get and turn inside something. Like, that's and that's what mobility is.
100%. That's awesome. Okay, I have to ask unrelated questions.
Okay.
This is not no strength and conditioning stuff from here on out. You're a fellow alien lover. Max is a fellow alien lover. I wake up to texts at like 5 a.m. of Max just going on rants about aliens. It's either like a rant about aliens or like the stretch shortening cycle.
Yeah.
It's never like a, hey, good morning. It's like, this is what the stretch shortening cycle is all about, or this is what I think about aliens. So you're a fellow alien lover. What are your thoughts on this whole, so I think the report's about to get released with the Pentagon. What are your thoughts? Because you've been, it sounds like you're more of a believer than the standard person. And now it's kind of becoming mainstream to start believe it.
How much time we got, Paul?
Oh, we got all the time in the world.
All right. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I was abducted by aliens.
Yeah. Max sent me the video.
Yes.
I was hoping we could get to this. Okay, this is exclusive.
And I was in an Indiana airport. I mean, we have time for real?
Oh, yes.
All right. I was in an Indiana.
Always time for aliens.
I was coming back from a conference, and I'm sitting in the airport terminal in Indiana, 6 a.m., first flight out, and I'm reading this book, the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not a big religion person, nothing against people that are, but I'm definitely a spiritual person. I believe in energy and all that stuff. And this dude comes down and sits next to me, and he goes, I'll never forget it. I was taking notes in mine as well. And he was like, what are you reading a book like that for, man? And I took it aggressively at first because I was like, what the fuck's that supposed to mean? Like, I can't read a book about spirituality. But I was like, he's an older guy. I was like, haha, no, man. I think it's cool. It's about Indian spirituality. I can relate to a lot of it. And he was like, have you ever heard of like the Hall of Enlightenment and all of these other things that I've never heard of? But I wrote them down in my book and I looked them all up. And then he started to talk to me about how we were brought together at this moment, that me and him are higher beings, and that everyone else in this room is now a bystander to our moment right now. He started looking around the room, picking people off, telling me what was wrong with their bodies, telling me what was going on with them. Oh, that person has this sort of cancer. That person has this sort of disease. And I'm like, oh my God, this dude is absolutely nuts. So he starts going, he's talking about all kinds of stuff.
Is he making sense, or do you think he's just a crazy person?
A crazy person, 100%.
Yeah.
Turns out he's a world famous ghost hunter, of which he showed me all these pictures with celebrities and ghosts. Not kidding. And I looked him up, 100% true. And we start talking. Have you ever flown Southwest?
Yeah.
So I fly in Southwest, and they say, all right, boarding for whatever is coming up. So I go to stand up with my number. He's the number right in front of me. What are the chances of that? What are the chances that he's the number in front of me? So we get on the plane, and it's him and his wife, and he goes, hey, do you want to sit next to us? Yeah, man, I guess we're sitting next to each other. I guess we're doing this. I sat between him and his wife.
Wow.
So we go on all these. He shows me pictures of like the sun and how that's where the transportation channel is to go between dimensions, all this. He tells me what planet I'm from. I'm from a moon off of Saturn. He tells me what my descendants were, why I'm on this planet, and all kinds of, he tells me about all of his predictions that he's ever had. He's predicted all the popes. He shows me this notebook. He tells me, man, this was 2018 maybe. He goes, what do you do in March of 2020? And I go, that's the most random question I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, I don't know, man. It's my anniversary. Probably be traveling. He's like, whatever you do not go to Rome. 2020, something bad is going to happen in Italy, and I can't tell you what it is. That's when coronavirus spiked the most in Rome, Italy in March 2020.
No.
Yes. You know how many people hit me up afterwards after they said that? He goes, dude goes, he said, Vernon, have you ever been abducted? And I go, I was like, I mean, at this point, I'm so freaked out. Like, I'm scared to what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And I go, no, I don't think I have. And he was like, they have. And he was like, they've tried to let you know, but you just don't ever pick up on the hints. And I'm like, well, what are the hints? And he said, they always leave a mark, and it's always after you've been to the dentist. And he was like, have you been to the dentist? Which is a reasonable thing to say. I was at the dentist for a root canal 2 days before, right before I went to this conference. And he was like, oh yeah, he was like, they're coming like next week. And he was like, that's how they put this sensor in your teeth, whatever. At this point, I'm like, yo, this dude is absolutely crazy. But it was entertaining.
Yeah.
At one point he reaches in his pocket and he goes, do you have anything in your life that no one else knows about? Like, that's an odd question. Like, a thing? And he was like, no, something that, like, you ever seen the movie Inception?
Yeah.
To let you know that if you're in reality. He reaches in his hands in his pocket and he does like this. And I go, oh my God, this dude's about to pull out a bomb. Yeah. Like, it was the first thing that pulled in my head. He pulls out an Altoids container with a ruby the size of like the entire container. And he was like, no one in this world knows this, that I have this except for my wife and you. And he closed it and put it in his pocket. And I was like, oh my God, yo, this dude is freaking me. He's freaking me out. He told me about my wife. He told me about my kids.
What do you mean it told you about him? Like,
he was like, man, you and your wife got married so young. She's so beautiful. She has beautiful red hair.
He knew that?
Yes. He knew who I was. He knew what my job was, which I didn't think that was that cool because, I mean, I'm not super athletic, but
you could figure that out.
Yeah. Like, I'm into fitness, whatever. But he told me everything. And then he said, right before we got off the plane, he said, hey man, just so you know, this is a good thing. When it happens, just accept it. And I was like, this is super weird. Got off the plane, called my wife, told everyone, kind of brushed underneath the bus. And then that video, I'm out skateboarding outside. Dude. Our security cameras that run 24/7 that have never skipped ever. And we have a backup main server just in case there's a power outage on their side of the security system, like where the company is that stores everything on their mainframe. I'm skateboarding. I fall. I don't remember what happens. I come inside and everyone's in there training. I'm in the parking lot and I go, yo, I just ate so much shit out in that parking lot. And they're like, let's pull it up on the security cameras. Pull it up and it's skipped.
Yeah.
We were like, what? And then when it skips, I get up off the ground. And if you were to hit your head, what was the first thing you do? You like grab your head, right?
Yeah.
Like if you hit your head, I get up and I'm like drunk, like stumbling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that's so weird. Like, what is that? And then I go to the bathroom, whatever it was. I went to the bathroom like next, and there was a spot on my butt cheek, like the top part of my butt cheek, that was blacker than your shirt, like the blackest.
No.
You know when you turn your iPhone on, how black it is?
Yeah.
That black.
No.
Literally an hour later, it was gone. The dude told me.
He said it always leaves a mark.
He said it always leaves a mark, but it won't last. And he was like, if you miss it, you won't know.
What?
Yes.
Dude. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
So when people tell me this alien shit, they're like, do you believe it? I'm like, dude, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Because I saw the video. So I didn't have that backstory of the guy.
Yeah.
That makes it 10 times better. Max just sent me the video and he's like, I think this is legit. I think he got abducted. And yeah, you were just like riding around and then all of a sudden you were getting up and you looked drunk and you were stumbling around and the time just skipped.
Yeah, it was like I can't remember what it was. I think it was like a minute and something, and it's just gone.
Yeah.
We contacted the security company. They were like, we've never seen this. It's gone. Like it just stops and starts.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's like there's no way to know what happened in that.
I mean, I know what happened. It was aliens, man. Aliens are real. I don't care what anyone says.
You have no memory.
None.
Dang.
None. Zero.
You had a spot on, and it wasn't like a bruise. It wasn't like a scratch.
No, it was a like the size of a 8-ball, like a cube, like a black cue ball, billiards ball, that big, that black. And it wasn't like on the bone, like if I fell and it would have bruised. No, it was like at the top of my butt cheek. Whereas like I went to the bathroom and then I changed my clothes because I worked out and I went out skateboarding and I was just like, what is that? And then when I got home, I jokingly told my wife, I'm like, yo, I ate so much shit on that skateboard today. She's like, you got to stop. You're going to hurt yourself. And I was like, check out this bruise. And I pulled it. I was like, what? My bruise is gone. And she was like, she didn't believe me. And then one of my other friends was like, dude, you got abducted. And I was like, no. And then we watched the video again, piecing it all together. And I was like, yo, he was right. It was 2 days later. He told me it was going to be 2 to 3 days.
What?
So aliens are real. Or if that's not an alien, whatever that is from another dimension.
Like, how did that guy know so much? You know, like that's information that there's no way he can just predict that.
He said not just me and him, there are others as well, but we are on this planet to be like the moon that I'm from outside of Saturn. Our beliefs and our religion or whatever it is to help people. We are the helpers. So I'm put on this planet to help people. And he was like, they're very pleased with the work you're doing. You're doing a great job, this and that. He was like being very affirmational, like keep doing what you're doing. And he was like, I was put here to inform people like you to keep going.
Whoa.
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense because even my flight was from Indianapolis to Norfolk is where I was flying, which is right over. But we flew all the way down to Orlando for my layover.
Yeah.
Because he was going to Disneyland. He owns a pizzeria in Indiana.
Wow.
So aliens do exist.
Whoa. I don't know if I can. That's probably the best story I've ever heard on this podcast. By far. By far. Wow. Dude. It's like, what did they want from you? They brought you back to teach them some mobility drills?
Man, those drills are out of this world.
Steal them for 1 minute.
Yeah.
Shut off the cameras. Dang, dude. And I see that's the thing. I'm a full believer, but then when you see people on TV, you're like, well, he's trying to get himself on TV. But like trustworthy dudes will also tell me crazy stories like you have no reason to make that up. I saw the video. Like,
and ever since then, I see it all the time.
See what?
Like UFOs.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen 3. Not all the time, but since then I've seen 3.
Dang.
And other people have been with me.
Yeah.
Like one was we were at the beach and my wife was with me, and it was literally coming on the beach, like above the water, and it was coming in fast, like it looked like a jet. And then I was like, oh, look, that jet has like 2 lights. That's weird, because they were like stacked on top of each other. And I thought it was 2 jets. And she was like, no, that's not 2 jets. And then it like was coming in fast, and then it got like super slow. And I was like, oh my God, that's a UFO. And I like tried to take my phone out, but you can't see the lights that far away. And then it's slow, and then it zipped off.
Dang.
And the other one, we were at the beach. It's always been around water. So them saying they're coming out of the water, every time it's been around water.
Yeah.
I was standing there with my friends, and we were shooting some videos at nighttime. They're a military company, so they were shooting some like CQB movement through our house. And we were standing outside, and I looked up, I was like, oh my God, there's a UFO right there. And they were like, wow. What? And we're just like looking up, and I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, like they're always out.
What? To see a UFO 3 times is special. Like to see one in your entire life is, pretty rare. If you see 3, that's like a weird connection.
Yeah. And people are like, well, you didn't see it. I'm like, I'm telling you, the people that were standing there with me, they can vouch that was not an airplane or a helicopter.
Yeah. Dude. So I wonder if they now mess with me since you're hanging out with me. Like, I wonder if I got the plug now. I want the plug. I can provide. I'll teach them how to jump. Like,
hey, it's like Space Jam, whatever, on what, Moron Mountain or whatever it is.
Yeah. Bring me in to train for a basketball game. Like, I'm there.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, my fear, I think they're going to come, and then they're going to be so much smarter than us. Then we're just going to be like, oh, you want to jump higher? Yeah, you just do this.
You just do this.
You're an idiot. I can't believe you guys did.
We also have the vert code.
Yeah, we have a better vert code. It's just you press a button and then you jump higher.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out of business, so
that would suck.
That's wild, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. That's the craziest story I've ever heard. Calvin's not going to sleep tonight. Calvin already, he's going to have nightmares. That's crazy. Well, we got to wrap it on that because you can't go anywhere from that.
I guess so.
We got to end it on that. So appreciate you being here. Where can the people find you?
Social media, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube at Vernon Griffith, the number 4.
Okay, we'll put it up here on YouTube.
Yep. Website, mission-explore.com. But I'm pretty. There's not many Vernon Griffiths running around, so if you type that in, you should probably see me somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. And then you got online programs. You got mobility programs, so people can kind of sign up for that no matter where they are in the world. Yep.
It's all app-based, so videos, coaching, whatever they need, audible coaching and text coaching, so people learn different, or maybe you just don't want to have your volume on. You can just read it. But all exercises have videos. I think very well programmed out so that even a beginner or an advanced person can do it. Mm-hmm. Just dropped a golf program. Been hearing some great feedback so far. So excited to see what those people can do in a good 6 weeks.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll have you back on. I think you're our first repeat guest. So congratulations on that. I think you're the only one that's been on twice.
Awesome.
So congrats on that. Not as cool as your whole alien connection, but I mean, it's a close second.
It's a close second.
All right, man. I appreciate having you on. Until next time, we're out.